I'm Kristin Omdahl, and we are here live in Southwest Florida. Today we are in my studio. This is episode 821. If you're joining me live, please say hello. Happy Friday, everyone. So glad to see that you can make it.
Right here in my backpack is the final answer to portable.
Let's see. Hi, Julie. Hi, Val. Good morning. Hi, Diane. Good morning, Rita and Judy, Kathy, good morning. Hi, Carrie. Hi, Sunshine. Hi, Melissa. Hi, Barbara. Good morning. Happy Friday, everybody. Today is Friday now. Yeah? Okay, yeah. Hi, Barbara and Constance and Lily and Lisa and Joyce, Melanie. Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to Create, Share, Inspire podcast. This is episode 821. Hi, Joyce and Melanie, Sean, Constance. Good morning, everybody. Welcome back. Glad you could be here. Hi, Christine. Hi, Joe. Good morning. Hi, Nancy. If you are crafting this morning, please let us know. If you have questions for me, please let me know. I am going to make a couple of announcements and then do a little demo on the board this morning, talking a little bit more about gauge. Hi, Jackie and Lisa. Hi, Sharon. Thank you, Julie. I'm wearing the Bianca knit top pattern. This pattern is super easy to make. It's done in Be So Sporty bling yarn, and you have lots of options with it, including making it longer or shorter, whether you want to make it as a dress, a tunic, or a top. I have this is a short dress, but what I like about making it in the short dress size is that it doubles as a tunic and a top if you wear it with, a solid underlayer and even add a belt. Now, I'm wearing all white underneath and it's a light blue top, so I wouldn't necessarily wear a black belt, but this just happens to be the one that I found right now. What I like about adding a belt to this, it doesn't have to be stretchy, it could be a regular leather belt as well. But look at how you can blouse that up and all of a sudden so in one piece you now have a dress, a tunic, or a blouson style top. And with those side vents, with the blousing up with the belt, I just think that that is absolutely perfect. But because of the colors I'm wearing, I would wear a tan belt with this. But that's just me, or it would depend on what color shoes and other accessories you're going to wear. I like to match my belt to those types of things. And I am wearing black sandals, so I guess I could pull off the black belt. Anyway, in general, when I'm wearing lighter colors, I prefer to go with more natural leather. Anyway, but again, that's completely personal preference. But isn't it great? I think it's so flattering on. Nancy's working on the Margot Cardi. That's wonderful. Sharon just finished the Jillian Shrug. That's great too. Wonderful. Love seeing people are finishing things too. That's such an exciting accomplishment, isn't it? Makes you feel so good about yourself when you finish something. Thank you, Lily. Thank you, Joyce. Hi, Jane. Thank you, Nancy. I love Caribbean turquoise too. It's one of my favorite colors. In fact, there's a turquoise probably in almost every one of my yarns. It's one of my favorite colors. What yarn is it? It is Be So Sporty Bling. Joyce is almost finished with the Fernanda. That's a fun one too, and a pretty easy one too. Lisa loves her HelloFresh. Wonderful. Me too. We've had some amazing meals this week with HelloFresh. If you are interested in joining it, I believe I still have some coupons. Let me see. Let's see what I have. I don't think I have any free boxes at the moment, but I might still have coupons for anybody that's interested. Let me see what I have here. If I log in, they'll tell me. Christine just finished the Highland Twilight vest. That's wonderful. Okay, yes, so I can give you $40 off your first order if you would like. So here is a link for that. So for anybody that's interested, oh, Judy found it too. Thanks, Judy. Judy, you beat me to the punch. Thank you. What else? What was next? Jane's working on the Selma. That's great too. That's this cardigan up here. Wonderful. Oh, looks like I have a sneak peek on camera. These two patterns are not published yet. I'm still working on them. So here's the Delta Stitch Be So Fine Bling garment that I'm working on. I don't have it finished yet, but it's looking very cute. And here's the Tunisian cardigan in Be So Baby yarn, which I'm still working on the belt for that one. So those are still in process, but coming soon. I'm also still working on that shrug that I showed the other day. That one's in process. So I've got lots of things that I'm working on behind the scenes, including other patterns that I'm not going to tell you about yet. But hey, that's the way it goes. What I can tell you though is that I released some Be So Fine bling tidbits overnight. So if you've been wanting to try Be So Fine bling, but wanting to try a smaller version, because I know sometimes people really like trying Be So Fine yarn in the tidbit size first before trying a full ball of Be So Fine yarn, especially if you're focused on making jewelry and stuff. I released Be So Fine bling yarn in both silver and gold in tidbit size overnight. So you can get roughly 200 yards of Be So Fine bling yarn. And if you click on any of the colors, it will tell you on the photo whether that one has the silver or the gold bling in it. I did not send an email out yet, Melanie. I decided to share it with you guys first, so I did make a soft announcement in the Create, Share, Inspire group on Facebook last night, and I promised that I would share the announcement here first before I send out an email to give you guys the opportunity to buy before anything sells out. So you can find Be So Fine bling tidbits for $11.99 on my website right now. Yes, they're great for skinny scarves, they're great for headbands, they're fabulous for jewelry. I love the fine bling for jewelry or for doing color work, right? So if you're going to mix and match colors for stripes or motifs or anything, it's really wonderful to have the smaller balls for that too. So if you get 3 of them, it would be the equivalent of, or close to the equivalent of, a full-size ball if you wanted to do some sort of stripes or motif work for a shawl or something. Hi, Sherry. So lots in Siri thinks I'm talking to her. All right, so lots of colors to choose from. I will just give you the list here. Be So Fine Silver Bling. The tidbits are available in Amethyst, Wisteria, Shale, Strawberry Punch, Fire and Ice, Peach Sherbet, Lemon Ice, Mint, Chantilly Lace, and Jamaica Bay. And in the Be So Fine Bling Gold, the colors available are in the tidbits are Pistachio and $1 Million Red, Stormy Sea, Sunshine Yellow, Night, Turquoise, Amethyst, and Espresso. So lots and lots of color choices. You could make so many wonderful things with these little tidbits, and gives you an idea of the yarn and see if it's something that you want to work with on a bigger project too. So great price, $11.99. If you would like to get those, they are available now. And what else? I think that's it for that, but there are lots of new colors in Be So Sporty yarn. If you want to check out Be So Sporty, listed a bunch of new colors last week, so if you want to check those out, that would be, and combine it all, to, because don't forget, if you spend $75 on US orders or $150 on international orders, you automatically get free shipping. So always a good idea to take advantage of that. Now, we did mention motifs, and we did talk about gauge in motifs the other day on the beach, and it wasn't practical to really explain it fully, and I thought it deserved to be the subject for the next day we come into my studio and talk on the board. And so the reason why it's so important to pay attention to gauge in motif projects is because, I mean, and whether you understand it conceptually for stitch counts, and it applies the same to stitch counts and motifs, but I thought we might talk about the motifs to start with today. So let's make it really simple. Let's say you're going to do a baby Afghan that's 3 squares wide by 3 squares long for a total of 9 squares. We'll end up applying this to garments as well, but I wanted to start with something super simple first, and then we'll grow on the information that we understand this morning. Okay, so let's say you're going to make a baby blanket. It's going to be 3 squares wide by 3 squares wide by 3 squares long, and let's say we're making it 36 inches by 36 inches, so each one of these would be a 12-inch square for a total of 36 inches this way and 36 inches this way. They're all 12 inches. Pretty simple, right? That part makes sense. Ultimately, there'll be tutorial videos for all of my patterns, and they're based on requests and based on the timing of my time available, but I appreciate the requests for the Selma cardigan video tutorials, and yes, they are on the list for video tutorials to be made, definitely. Okay, so let's say that you're using a different yarn than the pattern called for. Let's say you're getting a different gauge than the pattern called for. Let's say you can't find the right size crochet hook and you're just winging it with whatever size you can find in your stash, because come on, it happens to all of us. We lose our stuff and we can't find it, and we want to keep working, and what are we going to do, right? Sometimes you just have to wing it. And when you wing it, you may not get the right size squares, right? So let's say your squares ended up being only 8 inches wide. Okay, what happens if your squares are only 8 inches wide because you had to use a different yarn or a different hook or something, and you felt the itch to keep going even though you knew it wasn't going to turn out to the right size? What do? Okay, so let's say that these were all going to be 8 inches. So instead of 12 times 3 equals 36, let's say you ended up having 8-inch squares and it was 3 by 3, it's only 24-inch squares. So then you might say to yourself, okay, well, I'll just add another set of squares tall, and I'll add another set of squares wide. Okay, so now we've got 4 squares wide by 4 squares long. So what's 8 times 4 then? So then we could say 8 times 4. Okay, now we're at a 32-inch square blanket. Does that make sense? I'm not going to continue on until I see at least a yes or two. Or a question or two if that doesn't make sense. Okay, great. I see some yeses. So we're still not to our original 36. So what could we do then? Well, we could add a border. If you added a border around the whole thing at that point, and let's say you still wanted the original 36 and it's only 32, so 36 minus 32 equals 4 inches. Now, because you want 4 inches more for your width and your height, does that mean you need a 4-inch border? That means you need a 2-inch border, because if you added a 2-inch border here, a 2-inch border here, a 2-inch border here, and a 2-inch border here, now you would have that original 32 plus 2 plus 2, 36. And then you would have that original 32 here plus 2 plus 2. 32 plus 2 plus 2 would equal 36. Right? And that's to say that if you also decided you just wanted to add more motifs, and you did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 8 times 5 would have given you a 40-inch width and height instead. Does that make sense? I agree, Dave. Math with examples makes it a lot easier. But then that goes back to story problems, and I remember a lot of people hated story problems in school too. However, I love story problems and I love math. But I like making practical examples like this. And talking about a simple motif baby blanket, I think, is a really good example. And now we'll grow on this, right? So now let's talk about now we could talk about a shawl done in diamond formation, or we could talk about a garment, and I think we might end up talking about both, but let's start with a garment. Okay, so we're going to talk about a garment in motifs again. And this is where it's going to get a little more complicated. So 4 times 5. Okay, so, okay, all right. So, all right. Let's say that this is the beginning of a pullover, okay? Can you recognize that this would be the front, meaning that this would be, let's say we did 2 triangles for a V-neck, and let's say we did 5 motifs long by 4 motifs wide for the front, and then so the back on this would be, the back would look very similar but not have the V-neck, or it could. Sometimes it's fun to have a V-neck on the front and the back. But let's say we didn't do the V-neck on the back and just made, I know these aren't lining up perfect, but I hope you get the idea still. Okay, now let's talk about gauge again. Let's pretend that these squares are 4 inches wide and 4 inches tall after blocking. We're going to assume that these are all blocked measurements at this point, okay? Once if we, because, and we can, I can even give you an example once we start changing the numbers to show you how big of a mistake you can make if you don't figure out the gauge first. But let's figure out what size this is first. Let's say our motifs are 4 inches square. So if our motifs are 4 inches square, then this one is 16 inches wide and 20 inches tall, okay? 16 inches wide times 2 would be a 32-inch bust measurement. Now, let's say that these motifs are 5 inches wide. 5 inches wide and 5 inches tall. Then it's 5 times 4 is 20 inches wide. 20 times 2 is a 40-inch bust. Okay, and then there would be 25 inches long. Do you see how much different that, Barbara, Gladys grown motif? I don't know what you mean, but the Gladys shrug is made in motifs, and that pattern is based on getting a certain measurement for each square, and then that pattern is actually written like this, where if you want a larger size, you add more motifs. That's what you'll see in the schematic on that pattern. Now in other patterns, like a few of the garments in Layers crochet book that were motif based, they talked about changing your hook size so that the motifs become larger or smaller to create the different sizes. So for example, if, and I think the Chandra was like that, and there were a couple others like that. I can't think of the names off the top of my head. But in something like this, going from a 4-inch to a 5-inch is a big increase. You could actually, now let's change these. I'm going to need my calculator, and my phone's busy. So let me get my calculator out, because I want to show you how much more nuanced this is if your gauge just happens to change by a 1/4 inch, okay? So I don't have any other colored pens, so let's just give another example. Let's say we have a 4.25, a 4.5, and a 4.75, which would be 3/4 inch increments between 4 and 5 inches. So, okay, let me just do some quick math here. 4.25 times 4. Okay, 4.25 would give us a 17-inch wide front times 2 would give us a 34-inch bust circumference. Okay, then 4.5 times 4, I believe that's 18. 4.5, yes, is 18 inches wide times 2 for front and back would be a 36-inch bust circumference. And then 4.75 times 4, I can see the pattern here, would be a 19-inch wide front times 2 for front and back would give us a 38-inch bust. Okay, now how interesting is this? So between a 4, 4.25, 4.5, 4.75, and 5-inch measurement for each of those motifs, we go from a 32, 34, 36, 38, and a 40-inch bust measurement. That's a big deal. Let's say that you were making this top and you're like, oh, I hate doing a gauge swatch. I don't want to block my swatches before I begin. Okay, valid point, right? It happens to people all the time. They're like, that's no fun. I just want to make my top. I'm using the exact same hook size as the designer or as the pattern was made in. So what's the big deal? This is the big deal. Because a 1/4 inch does not sound like much, and a 1/2 inch does not sound like much. And honestly, a 4-inch to a 5-inch, where's my calculator? Or no, where's my, let's say you're measuring your squares. Here, in fact, I got a better idea. Let's measure a square up here. Let's measure off, here, I'll draw a straight line first. I'm going to mark off 4. Hold on, I think this is going to work. We'll mark off 4, and we'll mark off 5. Okay, and then this way, we're going to mark off 5, and we're going to mark off 4. Okay? Let's say that you're sitting on your couch, and you made your first square, and you're like, that looks pretty good. Like, or you look at this one and you go, that looks pretty good. Seriously. Anna, I'm drawing freehand on a board. No, of course they're not going to be perfectly straight. I'm just drawing freehand right now. I'm sorry that it looks confusing to you, but I'm doing the best that I can. But my point is here, though, that if you're eyeballing this sitting on your couch and not wanting to get up, not wanting to block something, not wanting to wait for it to dry, can you see how different how similar a 4-inch and a 5-inch square can look? And now let's put the other lines in there. Let's say that this is 4.75, 4.5, 4.5, and 4.25. Seriously, can you see how easy it could be? Can you see how easy it could be to make those wrong? Look at how close those are. Look at how close those lines are. Like each one of those squares looks so similar in size, especially if you're looking at it in your lap and you didn't, and you weren't going to block it, and you're like, oh, it's not going to grow, or it looks fine just the way it is. And what if your 4-inch square became 5, or your 4-inch square became 4.75? Can you see how close that is and how easy that would be for it to change once it's affected by water? And you could literally go from a 32-inch bust to a 34, 36, 38, or 40-inch bust. It's an 8-inch size gap from a 32 to a 40 just from not measuring this properly. Isn't that wild? What in the world? I've been getting notifications from YouTube that I haven't been appropriate in my videos and in my stories. Like, I think they got upset with the thigh slit in my dress the other day, which was absolutely not overtly sexy, but whatever. Yes, Nancy, the way fiber reacts to water is a big deal, and lots of yarns with lots of different tensions from the personal use of the person, making it everything there. It's you really have to see how the water affects. I'm paying attention. I'm trying to talk and read at the same time. Sorry, but water affects yarn so much, and we're making things that we need to wear. So obviously, blocking, not blocking, you're going to end up washing it anyway, so it's not dirty. So you have to know how water affects your fiber, and it changes the size very often. And so knowing these different sizes is a big deal. And I hope this little demonstration showed you how big it can go depending on how many motifs you're done. So we did something based on 4 motifs wide and then 8 motifs in circumference. Can you imagine if you did something with small motifs and you were off by 1/4 of an inch or a 1/2 inch? Let's say you were doing something 10 motifs wide and you were off by 1/4 of an inch. Then it becomes even more disastrous. This is based on 4 motifs wide or 8 motifs around. So the number of times the mistake multiplies is small compared to something with a smaller motif that therefore you need more motifs. The mistake ends up being even that much bigger. Does that make sense? Yeah, I got in trouble for my kitty yoga video because apparently my yoga top was too vulgar, and now I guess my my new dress with the side slit is too vulgar too. Anyway, I don't understand it. I see things way vulgar everywhere, including YouTube, but yeah, okay, sorry. Does anybody have any questions about this? Now, having this information, I used it to prove a point about gauge. But let's say you wanted a size that's not available in a pattern. You can use this for, so I think, which one would be back engineering? Maybe neither. I'm trying to read and talk at the same time. It doesn't work well for me. Oh, someone reported me. Oh, okay. Well, if someone reported me, it's probably the same person that gives me a thumbs down every day on the podcast. So, or like every day there's like 1 or 2 or 3 people that give me a thumbs down. And so, yeah, it's probably those people. So whatever. I don't lose sleep over that. I know I'm not vulgar. Yes, and the dress is beautiful and it is not vulgar at all. So I don't really care. What was I going to say though? Let's say the pattern doesn't. So the reason we talked about this on the beach podcast the other day is because I was saying sometimes it's very difficult to size something with a larger motif. And that's because the size differential from adding 1 more motif to something could be 6 or 8, or let's say you were trying to do a garment with 12-inch squares, you'd have to change. So let's say you would have a size 36. Well, you'd have to add 12 then, so that would be a 48, and you'd have to add 12 again, so that would be 60. Who wants a size range of here's size 36, here's size 48, and here's size 60? Can you imagine how many people would be upset in the in-between sizes that, well, isn't there a size between 36 and 48? And isn't there a size between 48 and 60? So you can see how very unpractical making something with this size square becomes when trying to make, write a pattern for multiple sizes. However, there are ways that you can actually use your gauge to affect size, and you can also add or take away rounds of a motif or a square to make it a different size. So let's say your motif, and we're going to stick with squares just because I think the more variables we add here, the more confusing this could be. But seriously, this could be like a 100-hour conversation because of all the different variables as well. And I'm going to change color. every round of this motif. Let's say this motif has 1, 2, 3. These aren't even. I'm drawing freehand. Hopefully you can still get the idea of it. Okay, so let's say this is a motif that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rounds. And let's say each round is a 1/2 inch tall. Each row is a 1/2 inch tall. Okay, so a 1/2 inch tall means it's a 1/2 inch this way, that way, that way, and that way. So it'd be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 times a half is 2.5, and 5 times a half is 2.5 in that one, which would be 10 rows. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. If you're counting the row height, there's 10 across, because 5 rounds, there's a row on each side of the center. So that would make this a 5-inch square. Okay. All right. If you made it all 5 rounds, it's a 5-inch square. Let's say you wanted to make it a smaller square for a smaller size. You could end on round 4. And on round 4, it would be then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 row high times 1/2 inch would be a 4-inch square. And then if you wanted to end it on round 3, it would be a 3-inch square. Okay, so you can see you could adjust the size of a motif by adding or taking rounds away to make it smaller or larger, to make it a different scale, to make a different size. So let's see. Does anybody have any questions about that? Oh, thank you. I love my Bianca pattern too. It can be made into a top, a tunic, or a top, tunic, or dress. Sorry, I'm distracted. I'm getting mulch replaced in my front yard today. Very exciting. And I think they removed all of it in the front yard yesterday, so I guess they're going to put it in now. Hopefully it won't be too loud and you guys won't hear it, but anyway. Yeah, Judy's posting a link to the Bianca pattern for those that are interested. It doesn't matter, Faye. I've heard and seen it all. How many years have I been in the public eye now? And I'm not even like famous. I've heard it all. Yeah, the chocolate top is very pretty behind me too. That one is not available yet, but it will be coming soon. That one's in the Delta stitch. And that's another one that I'm deciding on how I'm going to change the size on it. And it will be, I'm determining whether it'll be based on affecting gauge or based on adding repeats to the pattern, which is another subject, but I think it's easier to show this in talking about squares first. But what I'm saying about squares applies to the repeats of a stitch pattern as well. Aw, thanks, Jane. Okay, are there any questions about this? Yeah, it's fascinating, Faye. It is fascinating. The culture of what people think because you put yourself on camera and you talk to people publicly. It is interesting the way people react to that. And sometimes it's wonderful. Most of the time it's wonderful. Most of the time I get to meet so many more wonderful people that I would get to meet in real life. And there's lots of blessings and lots of wonderful opportunities because of using the internet to meet more people. Absolutely. But the psychology of the flip side of it's interesting too. All right, are there any more questions about this? Has this helped you? Does anybody think that understanding how something can seem like such a small difference Does it make sense that something can come out such a different size based on these small changes? I hope that that makes sense, because I think that it sounds so minimal, and I can see why so many people want to skip gauge because it seems so minimal. But I'm hoping that by showing all of this, you can see that if your patterns don't turn out the right size, it's absolutely for a real reason. Oh, that's great, Anna. Thanks, Rita. Jackie says it absolutely helps. Kat says it absolutely helps. Wonderful. Yay. I thought seeing visuals would really be helpful. And it's amazing. Dave, great analogy. Yes, in an Excel spreadsheet, one wrong move and every cell reads differently. Absolutely. It is definitely a ripple effect. If the size of the small pieces aren't right, it is an exponential difference with how much off everything else can be. Yes. I don't know if exponential is the right word, but it's a huge difference. Yes. Because you have to multiply the difference of the one to all, and it can end up being huge. Now, not as huge on something with a larger motif like this, but if you sat down and did the math on like 2-inch squares, it becomes very disastrous. But also an opportunity to modify a pattern if you're completely set on doing something that's completely off by gauge. Hopefully this makes sense, though, that you can use this information to change a size as well. Let's say your size isn't available, or let's say that the yarn or the hook or something else isn't available. You can modify a pattern based on this too. You can make a different size. Let's say, like we talked about up here, let's say that the square, because in this you'll notice in my patterns that are written where there's different numbers of squares for the garment. So the Gladys shrug is a good example of that. You may end up wanting to make a different size. This is a good example. You may end up wanting to make a different size if your squares are not the same size, which requires a little bit of math. But if you're looking to modify a pattern, you're going to need to use some math anyway. That's just the way that goes. Yes, Dave, everybody's gotten it totally wrong and wasted tons of material. It happens to everybody. Everybody makes mistakes. All right, well, I'm so glad that this was helpful, and even if it wasn't helpful, I'm sure it was somewhat entertaining watching me draw crazy stuff on the board and come up with crazy math to go with my crazy drawings. Anyway, thank you all so much for taking time out of your busy day to spend a few minutes here with me. I hope you enjoyed my show and tell and my little demo. I hope you enjoyed seeing some of the new yarns. If you're interested in doing a smaller tidbit size of Be So Fine bling yarn, please feel welcome to go check that out on my website. They are only $11.99, and if any of the colors are sold out by the time you get there, please get on the waiting list, because I will pay attention to the people on the waiting list and put more colors back in stock if there is a demand for them. I'm just doing it right now to see if there's a demand for it first. Anyway, have a wonderful weekend, everybody. Let us make time to create, share, and inspire today and every day. I'll see you Monday. Bye-bye.